that the biggest issue here is the role that the president will play in pressuring these members, especially in the House side, to accept what the Senate has done with the bill and get it done before, realistically, the August recess. I think that's the more likely scenario. But Senator John Thune is going to let this kind of work its will through the Senate, and you're seeing that play out. And talking about the benefits and some of the issues there with rural states, Missouri is one that I know they have deep concerns about that provision that Senator Lummis talked about. So you're going to have a couple of these senators that are going to raise their red flag as saying this isn't non-negotiable. They have a little bit more staying power as far as some of them aren't out for re-election this cycle, and they're not up in the midterms, whereas the House is going to have to play ball more so when it comes to Donald Trump's pressure.
So is that another way of saying, Maura, that the Senate actually does have a great deal more leverage here, might not be as easily moved by either the leader, John Thune, or by President Trump himself?
They do, just because of the fact that the House is up for re-election in 2026, and several of the senators that are speaking out, some are up for re-election in 26, but again, they represent a larger swath of the American public, and so their objectives here, they do have more legs to stand on as far as being able to push back on these provisions that the House pushed through.
What's your sense of this, Kristen Hahn, as a Democrat watching a Republican-only exercise? Do you expect that the House signs off on whatever comes back?
I mean, I think that if they want to ultimately get this done, they're going to have to. I worked in the House side when we had a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House, and President Obama in the White House, and it was a frustrating thing for the House staff and the members, because we would send something over to the Senate and that would come back to us, and we call it sticking the House. I mean, if the president wants to get it done, I think he's just going to have to force the members of the House to do it. And then a lot of them are going to be in some really tough spots if they get this done because of what we were discussing, heavy cuts to Medicaid and how that will impact a lot of rural America. And I know that there are a lot of members of the House who are very concerned about that coming back.
Well, when we consider those swing districts in 2026 and the messaging war that is going to be fought in them, Kristen, we were told last night by one Republican lawmaker that Democrats are just fear-mongering on this. President Trump is saying the same. How do you think voters will actually view this Medicaid issue? Is it just semantics to them?
I mean, you look at these town halls in a lot of these Republican or red districts, and people are fearful. They're scared, and that's not something that the National Democratic Party has ginned up. That's what's happening on the ground. People are they're upset, and they're voicing their opinions, and they're going to voice their opinions at the ballot box. So, I was actually as a comms person, very impressed with Republicans in the House who had been very concerned about this leading up to the vote for the bill. But once they voted for it, they were all speaking off of the same playbook, saying the Democrats are fear mongering. And this isn't actually, we're just, people who are not citizens of the United States shouldn't have Medicaid. I mean, they're doing a good job of talking about it up in D.C. and Washington on television. But at home, people are concerned, and that's what they should be concerned about in 2026 for sure.
What is it, Maura, that gets President Trump out of the White House back up on Capitol Hill? There's going to be a tough meeting at some point where everybody goes behind closed doors so they can be cajoled or even shamed by the president. We're starting with phone calls, but when does the personal visit happen? Does that push this across the line?
It will likely be when it goes back to the House. I think you're going to see some of these cuts, in terms of SNAP. Chuck Grassley has been pretty adamant about that one, that he doesn't like the House version of it. And so several members of the Senate don't like that either. And the discrepancy there between what the Senate wants versus what the House wants, it's pretty massive. So I think when we see how that plays out, and then again with the Medicaid discussion, the messaging there is important. And I think that Kristen hit on that a little bit there about what they're saying about fear mongering, but they're also talking about there needs to be a accountability when it comes to Medicaid, and the programs themselves are not sustainable if we don't get a handle on the fraud, waste, and abuse, both in Medicaid and Medicare. And so being able to talk to your constituents, going home and doing town halls, even though they're challenging and even though they're very difficult and you do get yelled at, it's important to hear your constituents, hear them out, and explain to them what it is that you're looking to do as a member of Congress. And that messaging war, unfortunately, if they're not successful, Donald Trump will have to come in and let them know here's what's happening, and he'll have to maybe make some promises about going to their districts and going in to help them during their reelection. I think that kind of a conversation between the conference and the president is going to be pretty important, especially with some of these holdouts who are concerned about the impact for their reelection.